The war in Ukraine has now entered its third year. Fighting is fierce. Russian forces are advancing with a speed unseen since the first weeks of the 2022 invasion. They have successfully breached several fortified Ukrainian defensive lines in the east. This rapid movement has triggered a new and profound sense of alarm across European capitals. The character of the conflict has shifted dramatically. The long stalemate that defined much of the past year appears to be over. A new phase has begun, more dynamic, more dangerous, forcing a re-evaluation of the strategic landscape. These recent breakthroughs are not minor gains. They represent a significant tactical achievement for the Russian military. After months of grinding attrition, superior firepower, manpower, have allowed them to overwhelm Ukrainian positions that had held for over a year. Capture of key villages, capture of strategic high ground, now threatens larger urban centers. Cities once considered relatively secure now within range of Russian artillery, facing encirclement, facing direct assault. The momentum for the moment clearly rests with the advancing Russian army. The current date is October 19th, 2025. The autumn mud has not yet fully set in, providing a window for mechanized assaults. Russian commanders appear to be exploiting this period with maximum effort. Their goal: secure territory before winter. Many Ukrainian military units are showing clear signs of exhaustion. Soldiers who have been on the front lines for months, in some cases years, are physically and mentally drained. Commanders in the field report a persistent and critical shortage of ammunition, particularly 155mm artillery shells. Supplies from Western partners are substantial, but are not arriving fast enough to match the high rate of expenditure required to halt Russian volleys. This scarcity forces Ukrainian gunners to ration their fire. They are often unable to suppress Russian attacks or support their own infantry effectively, putting key cities at grave risk. This strain is compounded by a shortage of trained personnel. Ukraine has mobilized hundreds of thousands of citizens, but the losses have been heavy. Replacing experienced soldiers is a slow and difficult process. The constant pressure along a 1,000-kilometer front leaves little opportunity to rotate tired units out for rest and refitting. As a result, the same brigades are moved from one crisis point to another, depleting strength and morale. If defensive lines fail more broadly, a cascade of territorial losses could follow, potentially leading to long and devastating sieges of major population centers. In response, NATO countries are taking decisive action. Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Thousands of additional troops are now in place. United States, Germany, United Kingdom. These nations are on high alert, conducting large-scale military drills to enhance readiness and deter spillover. The posture is explicitly defensive, yet it is the most significant militarization of NATO's eastern flank since the Cold War. Within the alliance, a serious debate is underway about more direct intervention. Direct combat roles for NATO soldiers in Ukraine remain a red line for most members. Enforcing a no-fly zone over western Ukraine, providing long-range missiles with fewer restrictions, have intensified. Some Eastern European leaders have floated a coalition of the willing, providing more direct support if the Ukrainian front collapses. This rhetoric raises the stakes considerably, increasing the risk of a direct clash between NATO and Russian forces, a scenario the world has worked to avoid for over 70 years. The battle lines in Ukraine are sustained by two competing global support networks. Russia, facing international sanctions, has deepened its partnerships with China, Iran, North Korea. Analysts report that China is providing critical non-lethal aid, including dual-use electronics, machine tools, and vehicle parts that are essential for Russia's war machine. Iran has continued to supply thousands of Shahed drones and is reportedly sharing technology for domestic production. North Korea, according to U.S. intelligence, has delivered over 1 million artillery shells and a number of short-range ballistic missiles. directly fueling the artillery advantage Russia now enjoys on the battlefield. Ukraine, in turn, is almost entirely dependent on a coalition led by the United States and the European Union. This support is multifaceted, comprising advanced weaponry, financial aid, and extensive training programs. The United States has provided over 100 M1 Abrams tanks, hundreds of Bradley fighting vehicles, and the HIMARS rocket systems that have been crucial for Ukraine. European nations have supplied German Leopard 2 tanks, French Caesar howitzers, and British Storm Shadow cruise missiles. The total financial and military aid from the West has exceeded $200 billion. Without this continuous flow of support, Ukraine's ability to resist the invasion would collapse. This global contest has spurred a massive surge in weapons production on both sides. Russian factories are now operating on a 24/7 schedule, reportedly producing over 2 million artillery shells and hundreds of new tanks per year. This industrial mobilization, often compared to a full war economy, has allowed Russia to replenish its losses and sustain high-intensity offensive operations. The scale has surpassed initial Western estimates, a capability not seen since the peak of the Soviet era. Experts warn the conflict is approaching a critical juncture, with several distinct paths forward. The first scenario is a new, costly stalemate. Ukraine manages to stabilize its front lines with a fresh infusion of Western aid and newly mobilized troops. The rapid Russian advances halt, but the fighting continues with punishing intensity. This becomes a protracted war of attrition, with neither side able to achieve a decisive victory. The world would face years of continued instability, humanitarian crises, and economic disruption, with the conflict frozen along a new line of contact, but never truly resolved. A second, more alarming scenario involves a cascading collapse of Ukrainian defenses. If ammunition shortages persist and Russian forces maintain their momentum, they could achieve a major operational breakthrough, leading to the encirclement of a large portion of the Ukrainian army in the east, or the fall of a major city like Kharkiv or Zaporizhzhia. Such an event would trigger a massive new wave of refugees into Europe, create a severe political crisis within NATO, and put Russia in a dominant position to dictate the terms of any future peace, fundamentally altering the security map of Europe. A third and highly perilous path involves more direct NATO intervention. Faced with an imminent Ukrainian defeat, a coalition of NATO members might decide to act more forcefully. This could range from deploying air defense systems operated by NATO personnel in western Ukraine to establishing a military buffer zone to prevent further Russian advances. While this could potentially halt the Russian army, it would carry an immense risk of direct military confrontation. Any clash between NATO and Russian troops, accidental or intentional, could rapidly escalate into a continent-wide war, with the unthinkable possibility of nuclear weapons entering the equation. Each of these potential outcomes will profoundly reshape global alliances and the international order. A Russian victory or a negotiated settlement on Russian terms would embolden the axis of Russia, China, and Iran, signaling a decline in Western influence. A stabilized stalemate or a Ukrainian recovery would reinforce the strength of the NATO alliance and the US-led order. The stakes extend far beyond the borders of Ukraine. The war's final result will define the rules of international relations, the future of collective security, and the balance of power for decades to come, forcing every nation to navigate a more divided and dangerous world.